Hello, everybody, and welcome to Arcane Wednesday for August 5th, 2020. I'm your host, DM Gallibond. Alright, everybody, today on Arcane Wednesday, we are going to be looking at a fun spell. Fun because it has changed in some interesting and delicious ways over the different editions of the game. That spell is Chain Lightning. So let's go ahead and get on with the show. All right, so Chain Lightning in 5th edition. It's a 6th level spell. Uh, one action to cast, 150-foot range, so it's pretty long range. Verbal somatic material components, which is a piece of amber, glass, or crystal rod, and 3 silver pins. Instantaneous, evocation, dex save, and it deals lightning damage, of course. So you create a bolt of lightning, arcs towards a target of your choice. 3 bolts then leap from that target to as many as 3 other targets, each of which must be within 30 feet of the first target. The target can only be targeted by one of the bolts. Must make a dex save throw. Takes 10d8 lightning damage on the failed save, or half as much on a successful save. And if you upcast it to 7th, 8th, or 9th, you can add a 4th, or 5th, or 6th additional bolt that spring from the first target. Doesn't deal more damage, but it allows you to target more enemies or more creatures with the chain lightning. Now, this version of Chain Lightning is pretty good because it offers you decent damage. It also offers you control over what gets hit. And that's an interesting thing that has not always been the case in the uh, in the history of this spell, which is one of the things that makes it so much fun. So let's go ahead and this is one of those times when knowing the history of a spell is kind of nice, because if you're in a weird area, like if you're in an area that has like strange wild magic effects, you can use your knowledge of the history of this spell as a DM to just sort of make up some weird effects that this might do. And it might give you a chance to just, rub your hands together gleefully behind the screen and do some things to just make your players' lives a little bit more miserable. Uh, you know they love it when you do that to them. Um, After all, the people who are players in D&D, they are players because they are masochists and they love enduring pain. All right. Chain Lightning, if we go all the way back to 2nd edition, it did not appear in the original rules, did not appear in AD&D 1st edition rules. So Chain Lightning had a range of 40 yards plus 5 yards per level. VSM, and as you can see, material components pretty much the same, except you had to have a silver pin for every experience level of the caster. So you had to be carrying around a bunch of pins. And casting time is 5. If you remember in our discussions of previous spells, in 2nd edition they had this brilliant, in air quotes, idea that every spell should have its own separate casting time, and so that would be added to your initiative and figure out when you actually went in the combat. So, yeah, fun. Alright, the spell creates an electrical discharge, begins as a single stroke of lightning, 2.5 feet wide, commencing from the fingertips of the caster. Chain lightning strikes one target or creature initially, then arcs to a series of other objects or creatures within range, losing energy with each jump. Now, if you remember on 5th edition, it's a single bolt going to the first target and then multiple bolts leaping out from that target. It doesn't quite work that way here. It's a single bolt that goes to the first target. Then a single bolt goes to a second target. And then a single bolt goes to a third target, and then to a fourth, and then to a fifth. So it really is like a chain. Every target becomes a link in that chain, and the lightning then proceeds. And here's how you calculate what it does. Initial bolt inflicts 1d6 points of damage per level of the caster to a maximum of 12d6. So half damage if the object or creature rolls a successful saving throw. After the first strike, the lightning arcs to the next nearest object or creature. Each jump reduces the strength of the lightning by 1d6. So each creature or magical object hit receives saving throw versus spells. So this will hit up to 12 targets. But one of the fun things is you don't always have control over what those targets are. The chain can strike as many times, including the first object or creature, as the spellcaster has levels, although each creature or object can be struck only once. Thus, a bolt cast by a 12th level wizard can strike up to 12 times, causing less damage with each strike. Bolt continues to arc until it has struck the appropriate number of objects or creatures, until it strikes an object that grounds it, or until there are no more objects to strike. Direction's not a consideration when plotting chain lightning arcs. Distance is a factor, and arc cannot exceed the spell's range. The only possible arc is greater than the spell's range, the stroke fades into nothingness. Creatures immune to electrical attack can be struck even though no damage is taken. Note that it is possible for the chain to arc back to the caster. So this is something where now, of course, a clever player who takes the spell and studies it and learns what it does, they would do something to mitigate lightning damage on themselves, just in case the lightning bolt came back. But because it does say creatures and it doesn't say enemies, that also means your party members could be hit as well. So unless you're going to mitigate lightning damage on your party members, then this can be kind of a dangerous spell to be throwing around in 2nd edition. So, and of course, if we're going back to that example of the 12th level caster, the first bolt does 12d6, the second link in the chain is 11d6, the third one is 10d6, fourth one is 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, until the last person or last creature hit only takes 1d6 damage. Alright, so that was 2nd edition. Now let's take a look at 3rd edition and see what happens here. And everything so far makes it a 6th level spell, so the level is not changing. In 3rd edition, Evocation, Electricity, Air 6, Sorcerer, Wizard 6. So verbal, somatic, and F means you have to have your spellcasting focus. So they didn't require you to carry around a bunch of stuff with that. However, your quarterstaff had to be your focus, which must be specially prepared. The staff must be a sound limb cut from ash, oak, or yew, then cured, shaped, carved, and polished, a process requiring 28 days. You cannot adventure or engage in other strenuous activity during the shaping or carving of the staff. So, if you really want to use this, you've got to account for the time it took to make your staff. Now notice the range on this is really, really long, 400 feet plus 40 feet per level. One primary target plus one secondary target per level, each of which must be within 30 feet of the primary target. Duration is instantaneous, reflex save for half, and spell resistance applies. So, creates electrical discharge, begins a single stroke, deals 1d6 points of electricity damage per caster level to a maximum of 20d6. 2nd edition was 12d6 maximum. 3rd edition is 20d6 maximum. After it strikes, arc to a number of secondary targets equal to your caster level, again a maximum of 20. So now this one can hit up to 20 targets. And the secondary bolts each strike one target and deal half as much damage as the primary one did. So now this is kind of, well, I guess this is actually, you just roll. An advantage of this one is you just roll one damage roll. So let's say you're a 20th level caster, you roll that 20d6, and that's the damage pool for the first target. And then every target thereafter, you just half that. Now, obviously, if you get down to 1 point of damage and you still have 10 targets left, well, those 10 targets still get hit, but they each only take 1 point of damage because you can't half 1 point. Minimum is always 1 point of damage. Secondary bolts each strike one target and deal half as much damage as the primary one did, rounded down. And then each target can attempt a reflex saving throw for half damage. You choose secondary targets as you like, but all must be within 30 feet of the primary target, and no target can be struck more than once. So I guess this is a limitation. Once it strikes all the valid targets, then it won't go anymore. You can choose to affect fewer secondary targets in the maximum to avoid allies in the area. So this one does allow you, 3rd edition, they decided, oh crap, that potential of it to just keep going and bouncing around and hitting anybody at random was not something that they really wanted. But I kind of tend to think that rule in 2nd edition, that's the one that I'd be using if you're in an area where there's like wild magic surges or things like that, and somebody, takes a wild hair and goes and does chain lightning. Instead of actually, I would let them go ahead and choose the targets, but I would roll for every one of those extra bolts. I roll wild magic, and if there was some kind of surge that did something weird, I might have those extra bolts go and actually hit party members or hit the caster themselves if they are within range. So that's what I might do with that on a some kind of wild magic thing. All right, so that's 3rd edition. Now 4th edition. 4th edition, they went a strange way with this one. Okay, so it's now picture this: 23rd level attack spell. 23rd level attack spell. From your fingertips springs a tremendous stroke of blinding purple-white lightning, leaps from one enemy to another. So you target one creature. The hit does 4d6 plus intelligence modifier lightning damage. Four d6 plus intelligence. Really, for a level 23 spell? 4d6? That's all you can do? Now, to be fair, for those that haven't played 4th edition, there's a crazy kind of mechanic on the intelligence modifier. I believe that every other level, your modifiers, regardless of what they started off, they get an extra +1. So you always get half your level as your modifier. So this is going to be, so your actual intelligence modifier, and if you're a wizard, you probably have a high intelligence anyway. And I believe that 4th edition has a mechanic where you can raise your scores on the way. So you start off with, like, let's say an 18 intelligence. That gives you a +4 on your bonus. And then if you're a 23rd level, half of 23 rounded down is 11. So 4 and 11, that's 15. So it's 4d6 plus 15. Still seems kind of wimpy for a 23rd level spell. So then if you hit, you make a secondary attack. And the secondary attack is 2 creatures within 5 squares of the primary target. And so you get to choose these targets. And it's again an intelligence versus reflex. and now it's 2d6 plus intelligence modifier lightning damage. And so from the 4d6, it goes 2d6, but you still add the same bonus. So in our example from before, instead of 4d6 plus 15, it would now be 2d6 plus 15. Um, and then tertiary targets. All other enemies within 20 squares of you. And intelligence versus reflex, and now this is 1d6 plus intelligence modifier lightning damage. And that's that again would be 1d6 plus the 15. Now, also to be fair, in 4th edition, like I said, it sounds wimpy for a thing, but 4th edition used a lot of monsters called minions, and there are minions at every level of every challenge rating in the game. And minions, they hit pretty hard, but regardless of what challenge rating they have, they always only have 1 hit point. So you could use Chain Lightning as a wizard in 4th edition, and you could just basically annihilate a whole army of minions if they were all within range. And 20 squares, that's every square is 5 feet, so 20 times 5, that's a 100-foot radius around the wizard that every enemy gets hit by that tertiary attack. That is contingent on the first attack hitting and then also the second attack hitting. If the okay, I think that's what that means. I think the effect requires an actual hit. It's a good question. I have to look that up and see if that's in fact the case. Whether it requires you to hit or not. All right, so that is a quick overview of chain lightning and how it has worked in the past. Again, one of the beauties about doing these is going back and researching how the spells worked in earlier editions. Like I was saying, for situations of crazy wild magic, it's kind of nice to know what it did before, because then you can kind of go back to sort of the spirit of the way the spell worked in older editions and use that to your own advantage as the DM, in order to create some plausible wild magic effects for some of these spells. Especially something that might put the party in jeopardy. Um, in a case where it looks like, they're having too easy a time with the battle. Okay, wild magic surge, and now, hey, guess what? You just dealt 10d6 lightning damage to three of your own party members. Now what are you gonna do? And now suddenly nobody trusts the wizard anymore in the party. So that can be a fun type of thing to do. All right, well that's gonna do it for Chain Lightning. Please take a look down below if you like what we're doing in this channel. Go ahead, click the subscribe button, click the post notification bell so you'll be notified every time a new piece of content goes up on the channel. In the description below, you'll find all of my social media platforms, and you'll find about my live streams and everything that I do. And on my Twitch channel, I have actually made affiliate. So thank you everybody who follows on Twitch. Really appreciate that. And you guys can come check out the games that we play on Thursday nights and on Sunday afternoons, as well as the Monday night Monster Monday that I do. All right, everyone. That's going to do it for me. Everybody take care. Talk to you later, and good night.